MOPBOYZ. When that two-stroke pop, tell me who want to smoke with us. 12 o'clock on your block, this Zuma scraping, it won't stop. Make these 70s rip. This castle smell like piss.
All right, the runner build continues, and we still have a ton of parts to throw on this thing. If you haven't seen the last video, we got the engine pretty much assembled on the bottom end. Crank bearings, crank seals, and then we assembled our whole gearbox. So we got straight cut Malossi gears now in there, Taronda gear cover, and a bunch of other pretty bits on the back side of this engine. We also did a little oil pump gut and seal off, so now that oil pump is sitting there just to support the back end, and you can see under there, bam, shiny new starter on there as well. And a quick update on the frame itself. We started assembling pieces of the frame. We got the bushings and everything back there for the engine mount. We got the foot pegs and all the pretty bits on there, everything freshly painted. But up here in the stem, we threw on a stage 6 needle bearing headset up here. But in the last video, we had a little problem here on spacing everything for the 2 crown nuts. So there's only 1 crown nut on there right now. We do have a solution for that now, and we're gonna fix that later on in the video. But first things first, we're gonna get to work on finishing up our engine, at least getting the top end and getting this thing fully sealed up. We need to get some of these parts that have been sitting here onto this engine now that we can actually build it and we have all the pieces to do so. We also have a big surprise in this video, because this video is when you're gonna get a sneak peek at some of the colorway we're doing on this build. So we're gonna be picking up our wheels and our shocks that we dropped off in the last video and see what those things are looking like with the new color option that we got on those. So some of these pieces we still can't put on, but look how pretty this thing looks. This stuff is going on. Carb, intake, we gotta get everything sealed up. I wanna get everything assembled so we could seal it all up today and then come back and do an air leak down test on it, so we know that the engine is ready to just drop in the bike, and then we can continue with the frame. Expensive, but this box is gonna be all put on today. We got so many of these water pump belts. I don't know why I bought so many extra of those. I have 2 more over there too. Bunch of seals in here for all of our top end right there. Head, we got piston rings. All right, boys. I'm gonna kind of get everything organized here, and the first thing we're gonna be doing is throwing on our top end. So very excited to get this thing set up. We're gonna have to check the squish on that. Talking to the homies at PM Tuning, they suggest basically a 0.9 to a 1.1, which is exactly what we did last time on the blue Zuma when we built that brand new Polini Evolution cylinder on there. So we went with a 1mm squish, and that's what we're gonna be doing on this one as well.
Ping, 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 ping. This scooter go. This scooter go.
All right, it's time to start assembling our top end here. So first thing we're obviously gonna do is get our wrist pin bearing and everything set in here for the piston, and we're gonna be checking squish using some solder here. So this is the first time I have ever gotten a 2-stroke cylinder with actual detailed picture instruction. We got a bunch of information here on our cylinder kit for our PM Tuning cylinder right here. Best currently available performance as a bolt-on kit using latest high-quality materials and technologies to give genuine 25 horsepower rear wheel, along with good long-term reliability for fast everyday road going use. And that's exactly what we wanted for the runner. They have 3 gaskets here, and even these gaskets are labeled the thickness. This is so useful. So we got 0.6 thick, 0.5 thick, and 0.4 thick. Never have I gotten a cylinder kit where they're labeled. They're usually very thin aluminum, half of them are bent. But we got our 1 piston clip in there. Yes, we have that open end pointing down. So that's what they suggest in here, pointing up towards the head, down towards the cylinder. Now this piston also has pinholes here in the bottom of these cavities here for the wrist pin, which is really nice. So a lot of parts of this bike are making sure parts are lubricated here. Big old holes here for the wrist pin on the crank itself, and yeah, very nice to see. So we're gonna fill everything up with some assembly lube here and get her going. Got it soaked on the wrist pin bearing. Everything with some assembly lube. Right there. All right. That's a nice sight to see for the runner right there. We got the circlip here for the other side of the piston. We'll stuff some paper towels in there just to be sure that we don't see this circlip falling into the bottom of our engine case right now. All right, we got both our piston clips in there now, all lubed up in there. We're gonna throw the 0.5 millimeter thick gasket on there, run some more assembly lube on the cylinder and the piston, and start throwing this all together to check the squish. That's right, it is time to finally check the squish on our engine and get this thing assembled. So we're lubing up the cylinder and the piston, and we're cleaning the top of the piston here so we can run a nice piece of solder across the length of this piston here. We're gonna use some masking tape and tape that onto the top of the piston because you don't want this piece of solder falling down into your engine. Once we get that taped on there and make sure that solder isn't going anywhere, we're going to rotate the motor just a little bit down so the piston has some clearance, and then we'll put our head on, because once we put the head on, we're going to rotate the motor back to top dead center, smash that solder against the top of the head, and be able to know exactly the distance between our piston and our head. So let's get this torqued on and check the squish. Now we're going to go ahead and turn our motor over to top dead center and let that actually smash the solder against the top of our cylinder head now. So here we go. There we go, pop that over. Hopefully using the middle thickness of the gaskets provided is gonna be exactly what we're looking for here. That's what I'm hoping for. So we can get this thing sealed up. Thing's hard to get off with the dwell pins on the top of the head there. All right, there she is. And as you can see, end of our solder here is what we're looking for. And see that smash right there? That's exactly what we need to measure right now. Just to be, 0.91. 0.91. So we're gonna go ahead and run the thicker one. So that's the 0.5. So if we throw in a 0.6, we'll be sitting right at 1 millimeter. Let's go ahead and do that. We'll strip it all apart. But now that we know that, take this one off. We'll get all this obviously sealed up now that we know. That's perfect though. Yeah, it looks like a 0.9 when I get a good grip on the solder, which is 0.89 around there. Now that we know exactly what we need to do to get the proper squish, we're taking everything back apart so we can swap the gaskets and get everything ready for final assembly. We have our piston rings here, and yes, these piston rings are marked to go in a certain direction. So they have a T facing towards the top of the piston. That's the point where you want to be able to see those, and we'll get those slid onto there. Now we need to prep everything with lubing up our cylinder and getting our gasket maker ready for the base gasket. So we got some contact cleaner here from Klotz, which works perfectly because it doesn't leave an oily film like carb cleaner or starter fluid would. So there's no oily stuff that gets stuck in your gasket. And here we are checking the ring gap. Yes, we are doing everything legit here. We're making sure the ring gap matches what PM Tuning suggested. So don't worry, we didn't miss that step. Now we're running some Honda Bond on our base gaskets and getting our piston rings nice and settled into the cylinder and slide that onto there. And then we're going to go back and torque these just like PM Tuning suggested, doing it in 3 stages, upping the torque all the way until you're at 18 foot-pounds and going in a cross pattern. We're also going to put a little bit of oil on our seal here just to prevent any ripping on both the spark plug one and the one for our skull cap. And then once we get that on there, we'll set that skull cap on and make this thing look all pretty while we go back and torque those down yet again to the specs. Boys, we are doing everything legit on this runner because we got too much money in this thing to be joking around with tightening bolts and snapping things. And this thing looks gorgeous. We also have an exhaust head here for our exhaust pipe, and this one has an O-ring on it. So we're not going to be running our standard gasket that we bought, and it looks like it's just going to use an O-ring. So now we bolted that up, got that thing torqued down, even though we're going to take it back off to do a leak down test here in a moment, which I forgot about. But everything else on the engine is sitting nice and pretty, and this thing is finally looking like a full, complete engine again. This is a huge step in the runner build, and it's only getting closer to actually being the first fire up. We got a massive Delorado carb here, a 34 millimeter with a giant intake that we're going to slap on as well. So we get our PM Tuning intake onto here, and we have some beautiful V-force reeds to go on as well. All right, boys, well, today is the air leak down test day on our engine now that it is all sealed up, and I'm glad to say that we have been out here already, and man, it's not focusing, but we set it to 6.5 PSI, and that thing ain't moving. It's been about maybe 5-10 minutes, but we usually aim for about 20 minutes, and this thing ain't moving at all. So the first time I put it on, it did. And then I figured out that it just didn't like how I had the exhaust blocked off before. So I usually have a typical exhaust plate I use for a block off, but this exhaust port is so wide that it was just a millimeter too short and there was a little air seeping through. So instead, I just smash this into the grip and it's basically just blocking this port off. You can see it's like a giant bubble. It's pretty funny. A giant bubble in there right now. It's pretty funny. It looks crazy, but it's holding air. Like I said, it has not gone down even the slightest bit. So we sprayed a bunch of soap and all that. That's why everything's kind of wet in here, as you can see. The one around here, just double checked everything was sitting nice and nothing is bubbling. This is obviously soap in here, so it's bubbly regardless, but you would notice if there's an air leak. You will see bubbles popping out all over the place. So we got everything plugged off on here, and I'm happy to say that our motor is healthy and perfectly sealed up. So that is a big check mark off the list for our engine, because now for the engine it is just slapping the CVT in there and the ignition, and the engine is basically done. I wanted to pull this crown nut off and do that in this video, but I do not believe we're gonna have time to do that in this video because I wanna post this video Sunday and I'm actually gonna go handle that Sunday night. So that'll probably be in the next video, but we're gonna take it to a lathe and cut down both these crown nuts so we can run two, pretty much the height of one, if that makes sense. So let's go ahead and wrap this motor assembly up, get her all cleaned up, and throw our carb on now. Check this thing out now. Man. It looks so good. This thing looks absolutely amazing. It is so fresh. The case is all brand new looking with the vapor hone. Every single bushing in this entire motor and frame over there. We got everything in here so nice and clean, dude. It looks so good. I cannot wait to hear this thing fire up. But we got one more thing for this video, boys. Let's go pick up our wheels and our shocks and let's see how those are looking. All right, boys, it is the end of the video and it is finally time to show you guys the runner wheels. Now, this may be only a little sneak peek at the color scheme that we are doing, but I'm not 100% set on the color like I said last time. So the color of these wheels and shocks, man, I just want to show you. It gives us options, but these wheels are insanely tough right now. So I still want you guys to go down to the comments below and give me some color suggestions on the runner for the panels, but I need this thing to pop. I think we need to kind of make it look bizarre. We need to make it look like how the Europeans do the crazy supermotos. We need it to pop and we need it to stand out. So that's exactly why we got these boys polished. Now, this wasn't something easy. Now, luckily, there is a guy locally that does some crazy polishing on these because 90% of these had to be polished by hand. Got stripped down, obviously, for all the paint, and then we had to put it in a wheel machine to then polish it a little bit and then come back and hand polish it. So it was a lot of work. So $550 just to get these 4 pieces polished, and couldn't even get all of it, bro. Like, no, that part's in the tire, so it doesn't matter. But it is just crazy, man, how expensive it is to polish things. Now, you might be wondering why I didn't just get them chromed. Chroming is completely illegal in my state, so you'd have to go out of state to get items chromed, and the price I got quoted on the chrome was $600. So it was only a $50 difference to get chromed, and I had to go out of state to do so. So it made more sense for me to do polished, and it takes away, obviously there's no extra material, so you don't have to worry about the overlap of chrome dipping where things get chipped and splinter off. We got a lot to do with the shocks because I went and ordered new fork seals and everything to get these dialed again, because these are the stock shocks still. So supposedly these C-back or C-back shocks here are pretty good, and we got a fork seal for those, and I was able to find a fork dust cover that is pretty similar to these that should work perfectly fine. For the runner, boys, I haven't found the exact rotors that I want for this thing to be able to use stock calipers but better rotors. It looks like the rear rotor alone is a 240 millimeter, and there's not much options, and I can only find the OEM style Piaggio ones available to get to America. So look how good this thing looks with the full carb on there, the big old Malossi air filter, and all the bits just popping, man. Definitely stoked on this runner. This is very fun to go this far into a build. We did something similar like this on the Zumas, but the Zumas are a ton easier to get parts for, and it's just way more common here. So the runner is like a whole ordeal. It's like a full-time job right now, researching parts and getting everything settled. A lot of work and a lot of money that's gone into this runner so far, but I'm very happy with it already, and I can't wait to get this thing running. And I want to say a big thank you to you guys. Without you guys watching these videos and supporting the channel, I probably never even would have built this anyways because it's just too damn expensive for a scooter, and it's sick to see how many of you guys are actually stoked on that. If you do want to support the channel, you can go down to the description down below, grab some gear off MOPBOYZ.com. That's the most helpful way that you can support the channel, and you can get some sick gear in doing so and rep the MOPBOYZ. So stay tuned for the next video on the runner. That's 2 runner videos in a row. So leave a thumbs up for that, and I'll see you guys in the next one.